I'm the host of Discover the Oak Ridges Moraine video series, Susan Lloyd Swale. This video series is a journey in learning about the Oak Ridges Moraine through visual exploration and interviews with experts. The Oak Ridges Moraine, known as Ontario's rain barrel, is a major source of groundwater for the Greater Toronto Area and the lifeblood of Ontario's Greenbelt. But as you'll see in these videos, it is so much more. Here we are at episode 8. The Oak Ridges Moraine is cool. In this episode, 3 scientists tell us about their research into climate change at University of Toronto's Koffler Scientific Reserve on the Moraine. Get a sneak peek into this field laboratory with breathtaking vistas of the fields and hills of the Moraine.
We are a research station where we focus primarily on ecology, evolution, biodiversity, and conservation. And we're based in the Oak Ridges Moraine, just in King City, very close to Newmarket, which is conveniently only about an hour away from each of our campuses, the University of Toronto, St. George, Scarborough, and Mississauga. So it's a really great way for people who integrate their field research and their lab research. We're really fortunate to have some pretty remarkable infrastructure to study climate change research. So we do have our lab, which is just behind us today, but we also have a bunch of field setups where we can study climate change both through observational studies, because we have this really detailed land use history for the property. It used to be an equestrian farm. We know everything that's happened to the land. So we can see over time, and where we also have climatic data, how these plant communities, how the animals that are here, how they've changed over time with climate change. But we also have these really remarkable experimental setups where we have heating arrays, where we can control different climatic factors, so temperature, sun exposure, precipitation, so that we can do these really in-depth studies on, say, how plant communities, on how different tree species are responding to climate change. And because we're on the Moraine, we get this huge diversity of ecosystems to study. So we're not limited to what we can study here. There's so many opportunities, which is really, really fun.
I'm here on the Oak Ridges Moraine with Professor Art Wise. Art Wise is a professor outstanding in the field today. Thank you for being here today, Art.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah. So kindly tell us about your current research.
Well, I've been working on up here at Koffler Scientific Reserve, Jokers Hill, for the last decade or so, researching the connection between climate change and evolution. We're dealing here with a whole landscape full of species that for the last 10,000 years have experienced a very narrow range of climates. And so over that time, of course, they've probably adapted, fine-tuned, tinkered with the genetics so that they perform well within that range. If you suddenly shift that range, you're putting them into an environment that they're not really adapted to historically. So the question is, do they have the genetic wherewithal to make that fine-scale adjustment over the time course, the very, very quick time course that you expect with climate change? We know these species made those kinds of adjustments 10,000 years ago when the glaciers were retreating. All the species you see here, they were all occurring down south, way south of the Canadian border. As the glaciers retreated, they recolonized, and they had to make adjustments along the way. Plants had to evolve to the new soils. They had to evolve to deal with the change in the day length. Summer days are longer up here than they are in the equator. Winter days much shorter than they are at the equator. So they had to make those sorts of adjustments. So the question is, if they could make those adjustments over thousands and thousands of years due to this natural last fluctuation in the climate due to glaciation, can they make it with the current anthropogenic climate change, which is occurring over just a matter of decades? Keeping the forests and the other sorts of habitats on the Oak Ridges Moraine healthy is really important for 2 reasons. First is that they're a carbon sink. They're drawing carbon dioxide out of the air. What are they making it? They're making it into plant material. Plant material dies, A lot of it goes down into the soil, gets sunk in there. We're standing on a carbon sink right now. Pave that over, well, there's no more carbon going into the soil. There's no more carbon being dragged out of the air. And so you have then this problem of how do you get rid, even if you stopped emissions of carbon dioxide today, you still got to bring down the level of carbon dioxide that's in the air now to prevent substantial warming. So that's the contribution that the Oak Ridges Moraine makes. But if you think about it, that's a contribution of the moraine globally, because the air doesn't stay over the moraine, it goes all around the world. And so lots of places like the moraine are needed to enhance this storage of carbon. But there's another issue that is very locally important, and that has to do with water. People like to call the Oak Ridges Moraine Toronto's rain barrel. I think the analogy is more like it's a sponge, okay? Because we expect, among other things for the next coming decades, more extreme weather events that include massive rainfalls. Places like this sponge up that water and hold on to it under the soil, okay? It sits there, and the water that's absorbed by the moraine is then tapped by communities for drinking water purposes. And so if drought comes after that big heavy rain, the water's there. It doesn't run off into the lake and gone forever. It's held here on site. And so I think the increase in extreme precipitation events, increase in the incidence of drought, is going to make the moraine a really key factor in water availability.
We're here on the Oak Ridges Moraine today with Roslyn Murray. Roslyn is an assistant professor at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. How does improving ecological integrity help us deal with climate change?
Right, so in particular, having a green belt, especially this close to cities, like the Oak Ridges Moraine, means that we have rural environments, we have wetlands, and we have forested areas that can act as a carbon sink. So decreasing the greenhouse gases that are generally coming from urbanized areas like Southern Ontario's Golden Horseshoe.
Yeah. Why should people care about protecting the Oak Ridges Moraine?
So one really important part, particularly about the Oak Ridges Moraine as a greenbelt so close to such a huge population in Ontario, is that this is a space where there's lots of parks, there's lots of natural green space where humans can escape the hot cities and come to these natural spaces, and without driving really, really far. That's a huge benefit to having a greenbelt that stretches as far as the Oak Ridges Moraine does. As well, cities are actually increasing in temperature. If you think about cities that are covered in pavement and impermeable surfaces, so anything paved, you can think that the water doesn't seep into the ground, it runs off of that paved surface. That's going to absorb a lot of sunlight, a lot of heat during the day, and at night it gives off that heat as the temperature cools down. So cities are actually these hot spaces in the environment, and places like a greenbelt, like the Oak Ridges Moraine, actually provide a place for humans to escape to and animals to escape to, so that we can all enjoy these natural spaces without driving really, really far away in order to have some natural space.
Join us for new episodes to Discover the Moraine. There's lots to choose from.